How's it going, baby? How you living? How you living?
I really like to take this challenge for myself, aside of just being a musician.
She had a swishy jacket and some thing on her head.
It's really big for you.
Yeah, it's like the size of me.
Don't worry, I won't say anything stupid. I hope. It's just like a crazy metal band, like shooting everything up.
My advice is forget the movies and look for a good job.
My daughter is going to sleep, so I needed to say goodnight to her.
I don't want terrible things to always be happening to me and my children.
I think I was more nervous when the movie was premiering and coming out, because then I realized that people actually had to see it.
Nice to escape the studio. We have the beautiful, not sunny English countryside behind us.
This country and this world can do a whole lot better.
Wow, what a presentation.
Right, like I want people to know that you didn't just show up now.
That's where the idea of the pancake came from.
But you're the only person ever who has ever asked me that question. Ever.
Oh, wow.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts, based here in Seattle, Washington, in the United States of America. And thank you so much for joining me on this Thursday, the 5th of August, already 2021, and some real quick housekeeping. I do have more live streams coming up next week. 2 of them were confirmed, one on Monday at noon Pacific Daylight Time, and one on Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And there's another one that's coming. I just got the email from the publicist. He's just trying to lock down the time next week. So if you'd like to know more about what I have coming up, please follow me as Eclectic Arts Media, one word, on Instagram. That's where I post everything first. And then some of that information migrates over to other social media platforms. If this is your first time joining me on my YouTube channel, if you could hit the subscribe button, I greatly appreciate that. If you want to know what's coming up, you can also hit the little notification bell, but please be aware that we'll send emails to your inbox, but the subscription button will not. And if you're over on the Twitch side of things, if you could follow me over there, I always appreciate that. That's where I started off back on May 22nd, 2020, with the Alice virtual tour on Twitch. So I will always maintain a platform and a presence over there. And again, I'm just really glad to be here. As I was mentioning to my guest pre-show, this is live stream interview number 127. Gosh, that's just for this year. Total since last May, it's 232. So clearly, I like doing this, and if you'd like to support the channel by subscribing again or following me on Twitch, that's great. If you really would like to make a tip or a donation, everything goes back into what I do as Eclectic Arts, including the background and the materials and everything else. There is a PayPal me link in the YouTube description, so you can always click on that at any given time. Every video description has that link in it, and also there's always links for the guests that I interview down there as well. So all the information is down there. Okay, my next guest is an award-winning, multi-talented artist. She is a director, writer, animator, and composer, among other talents. Her newest short film is called Beautiful. Please welcome to the Eclectic Arts Virtual Studio, Mulan Fu.
Woohoo!
Hi, Mulan. Mark. Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you? Really glad to be here.
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time early in the morning over there.
No worries.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate this. This whole time zone thing, I was just telling somebody else that I'm kind of getting good at it when I know like where a guest is, if they're in England, if they're in Germany, Kazakhstan, South Africa. But yeah, I thought you were on the East Coast in the US. I didn't realize you're back in Shanghai for the time being. But again, thank you so much. And yeah, you have such a wonderful background, and I've been checking out your work that I can't wait to dive into all of this and get to know more about you and what you do. So
thank you.
Yeah, let's start off with Beautiful, since that's what brought me here and got me connected to your work, and then we'll kind of work our way through the different parts of your timeline. So what prompted you to take such a personal story and put it into a short film?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It was inspired by a personal experience of witnessing and accompanying a lot of my families and friends who's going through this disease or have their families impacted by it. And then especially by the experience of me actually being in the hospital and taking care of a family member who's going through the whole process and witnessing her change and her physical transformation and her mental transformation in the same time, and also seeing how other patients and their families are coping with it, and just seeing that strength that they have in them, that they must have the courage to actually go through this whole journey, and also to face the transformation that is being brought onto their body, and then also all the impact left by it, the impact on their ego and their self-perception and their understanding of what beauty is, that just changes permanently for their life. And I was searching around and found there wasn't much representation of that process, and especially the physical transformation and that impact on visual media. And I was just really also contemplating why that is. And it will be difficult to kind of present that and display that in live action, or some more, kind of confronting it in your face kind of visual medium. So I was just thinking, is there a way to capture both the physical and the mental journey in one piece? And here I am.
Wow. Okay, it's a lot to unpack. And for those folks that haven't had a chance to see the short film yet, just in general terms, we're talking about cancer. Obviously, the short gets a little bit more specific, and I think everyone, like you just mentioned, has been touched by that in some form or fashion. Family, friend, coworker, someone. I know for myself, with my mom, we have several family members that either survived or passed from it, and so it's interesting that when I was watching this, that it really does delve into this this area that you don't really see represented too much in visual media. And the way you did it, it's so tasteful and so heartfelt, and yet it's in 5-6 minutes period of time through animation. So I was just really kind of dumbfounded by it when I watched it. And
Thank you.
I'm just curious so as you were walk me kind of through this, since I'm clearly not an animator or a filmmaker. When you knew you wanted to start this, how do you build your storyline before you start figuring out the animation parts of it, or what did you kind of do through this process?
Yeah, I mean, for these kind of shorts that are based on true stories, or partially autobiographical, there's already a basis for at least the emotional message and the overall story that I want to tell. It's just a matter of how I choose the narrative strategy and the narrative method. So, in this one, I kind of use like a slightly more experimental, overlapping fantasy and reality a bit, that kind of narrative structure. But in the very early stage, there was a lot of experimentation, on paper, just figuring out what kind of, do I do like a linear narrative, or do I kind of go all around and dive into like a dreamlike memory landscape and try to tell that from like a memory perspective. So there's a lot of exploration of storytelling strategies. And then after landing on this one, which I think captures my perspective and my experiences at the hospital, which was I observed a lot of these really interesting parallels between the daughters and the mothers at the ward, because the daughters that are they are on average my age, and they were all taking care of their mothers in the same way that they were taken care of when they were young. So, and then the mothers are the ones being taken care of and are vulnerable. So there was that parallel of, that versus when we were younger, we all have this image of our mother being the one that's really taking care of us and protecting us. And so that's what I really wanted to capture. And that's the conclusion of that like storytelling exploration, is that's the core of the narrative that I want to tell. So that's why I landed on this structure. And then, after that is the all the doodling and sketching and figuring out the storyboards, and just dives into the visual part.
Okay, yeah. This, as I've mentioned many times during my live streams, when I have a chance to talk to film-related folks like yourself, that I'm always fascinated by this. I'm the person that, like, when DVDs came out, I love the special features. I'd watch them first before I watch the film, kind of thing. So I love the behind-the-scenes part of it. And as you're describing that narrative of trying to figure out which way do you want to go with the storytelling, and then also just those experiences, like you talk about the parallel. I mean, the same parallel also happens with age. As parents get older, the roles start to reverse between the children and themselves, and it's fascinating to think about. Like you mentioned, you're seeing daughters that are roughly around the same age as yourself, and then watching those parallels happen with their moms that are going through these things, and that has to be a new record. They quit on me 12 minutes into this. So I'm back. We're back. Sorry, folks out there. Cool. I'm still having problems with my my connection. But as I was saying before, I was so rudely dropped off from my platform. My mom is a breast cancer survivor. We had my aunt was a survivor at the time, and she's since passed on from other things. And my grandfather had gone through many chemo treatments. So I've been in the hospital, taking people to those appointments and kind of seeing it just from the son's point of view, or the grandson's point of view. And there's so much that you can start unpacking with, like you're saying, these parallels that happen. Did it become overwhelming at any point where you're like, I don't know how to take all of this stuff. I need to just focus on these three things to make my film without it becoming a feature, basically, after a while?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there was, as you said, there's so much, emotional journey and experiences packed into even just a month of experiencing it or witnessing it. And even just, actually closely observing one person's journey, you like, especially when you're at the hospital, and inevitably like see so many other lives passing by, and just so many other journeys that you could capture, and they're all equally meaningful. So there was definitely that dilemma at the beginning. Like, there were so many types of stories and perspectives that I wanted to tell, and whether I should capture them all in some way or dive really deep into one that I think I can personally tell the best. So there was definitely that sort of frustration at the beginning, because I really do want to tell them all, but I was also I was being economical about my own time and budget and effort, and just making sure that I'm respectful for my content and my audience, and just making sure that the kind of perspective and experience that I'm trying to display is something authentic and something that I can represent. So this is the final story that I landed on. But you're right, there's so much could be told and will be told, I think, in the future.
Yeah, it's I was just doing a live stream yesterday with a film director, and we were kind of talking about that. I'm just amazed that any film gets done and completed at any time based on everything that goes into
me too.
Yeah, the more that I get, the more opportunities I get to talk to folks like yourself, and I hear all these things and all these pieces, and it doesn't matter if it's a feature or short, a documentary, fictional. It doesn't matter it's just anything, because there's so many creatives that are involved with it. Could be anywhere from a team of 3 to hundreds of people, and just like there's all these things and moving parts to it that it feels like, like how do you finally end up with this end product? So like in your case, it sounds like you have you're doing the bulk of the work, but there's some collaborators too, of course. How long was this? So once you've landed on the concept, this is the story that I want to tell, and then you start doing the doodling and the drawings for the animation. What kind of timeline was this? Was this like X amount of months? Was this X amount of years? How long was this to do this particular short?
This one took about 7 months from the absolute beginning to the end. So beginning would be me wanting to make this, and actually, before the story exploration. So that probably took a month, and then pre-production, design, storyboarding took a month, and then afterwards is all just like grinding. Yeah.
Okay, and then did you have to set like a personal deadline, or did like the powers that be said that they want something done by a certain time?
Yeah, it took so much so much time management. And one part is it being my graduation film at NYU, but this film was entirely made during quarantine. So it was also, it took me a lot of effort to make sure that, every morning I just sit down and like work on this. And I had like a very detailed schedule of which shots to work on each day. And then that's 7 days a week. So, yeah, so it took a lot of self-management for sure.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. And like you said, I mean, the fact that this happened during quarantine time adds this extra element of like, because I know what that was like for everyone else out there as well. It's just like some parts of that time I was not motivated to do anything, and then other times it's like, okay, I feel like I need to be productive. I better do something.
Yeah.
And so if you knew that you had X amount of scenes to work on or a timeline during that particular time in this history, just added this whole other element. So yeah, kudos to you for sticking it out and getting it done. And not just saying, you know what, I'll finish this when I can get to it, and or whenever whatever NYU gets on my case about it or something.
Yeah.
So you're doing the doodling, you're working on the animation. What comes next after the animation's done? What was this? The sound design and the voiceover stuff, or what were we looking at next after that part?
Yeah, so for for animation in general, you do the voiceover at the beginning, so you can sync the mouth shape to it when you're drawing. But for this case, because the voice actor is actually my mom, who is a professional actress, and she had a really successful career, and she kind of just retired from that when she was at her peak, and to take care of me, and so but she still loves acting, and basically any role, like she would just see that as like a fun challenge. And she also voiced the little girl in this, like every single character. So for her, because she's a live action actress, and she's more accustomed to doing the voice acting afterwards. So I basically, worked on the performance and focused on the visual first. So I did the animation first, and then it's, giving it for voice acting, and then sound design in the meantime, and then also myself compositing everything together, adding some effects and texture and stuff, and also writing the music. So so the second, the third chunk of it is, really all the soundscape creation. So that's all happening simultaneously.
Okay, so since this was your final project at NYU, I believe you said. Okay.
Yeah.
So do they require students like yourself to try to do as much as possible yourself, or can you sit there and divvy it up as much as you want?
Yeah, you can. It's completely up to you. As long as it's your project, your originality, and then you created the team. Like, you have to be the one that's the centerpiece of it. But it's up to you, like your type of collaboration. If you want to have people on board to take care of, to borrow their expertise on certain field, like, you're certainly welcome to do so, but also do it at the with the industry work ethic, and so it's completely up to you. There's no requirement.
Okay, I was just kind of curious when I started thinking. I used to work at a private college here that was designed for video game designers. So we had programmers and designers and people learning animation, 2D, 3D, sound design things. And then a long time ago, I myself personally used to work at a computer company as an audio engineer. So I was used to working with some really basic, when cartoons were first getting to the web. This was like 20 years ago. So then they'd come across me, and then I have to put the voiceover pieces together, or the sound design stuff behind it. So that's why I'm kind of curious about what things are like now in the modern day of putting these things together. So as you mentioned, you composed the music for this short.
Yeah.
Is that something? Well, obviously you did it. So was it something that you just truly wanted to do the music, or was it kind of like, well, it's just easier for me to do it than trying to have somebody else work on it, or maybe both?
Yeah, that was a both kind of situation. So for me, because I studied piano for 15 years now, and then and then like at the certain point I just started composing, and then and it's really fun. And that's one of the reasons that I really love film, because it combines all of my interests together, you know, like the visual storytelling part, the doodling part, and the music part. And for this one, because it's such a personal story and I'm really clear about the kind of emotional atmosphere and emotional arc that I'm building, and that has so much to do with music. So I was pretty set about just making sure that, you know, the music conveys and preserves as much as I want and you know, picture and for the final film. So yeah, so I was just like, why not? I'll just do it. Yeah.
No, I love the fact that that you wore so many hats, you know, during this particular production.
Thank you.
I relate to that just with my own media outlet. That when I started off, I had some friends that kind of helped me out here and there, but I was doing the bulk of the work, and now I do all of it. I'm a team of one. So
Yeah.
I can relate to that kind of thing. So, well, I'm a photographer, so I should figure out how to do the photography part. If I'm going to learn how to do, you know, writing or reviewing or interviewing, you know, these kind of things, like, well, it's kind of like a new challenge. I've got a music background as well, so why not try putting it all together? And this kind of begs like a side question. When I watched it, your short, Beautiful, for folks that are joining us right now, that's what we're talking about with Mulan Fu. It almost seemed like it could have been done strictly with the music, without any kind of dialogue or anything. Did that ever cross your mind, or maybe for a future short or future film project, trying to almost challenge yourself? Because clearly you have the music background with 15 years of piano to possibly do something that, and like you said, it is such an important piece to convey that emotion. And I just watched a film recently that had 0 dialogue, and this was a feature film. So I'm kind of thinking, well, your work seems like, because your animation is very distinct, and it kind of seems like it might kind of lend itself to, but did that ever cross your mind, or maybe again for something in the future?
It did, yeah. I mean, it was always my kind of personal style to have the music do most of the emotional storytelling, and then, but for this film specifically, because it's I wanted it to be emotionally appealing for audiences around the world, because it's such an universal experience. And you know, dialogue, especially, you know, people talking, has that power of kind of bringing you down back to reality a bit. And the music have the ability to kind of lift you up into a fantasy world, or kind of like a world in your mind. So I was trying to balance that out. And so for the dialogue, the main purpose for that in this film is to bring it back to reality and emphasize the side of the realistic side of this experience. And music was mainly for you know, directing the emotional experience of it all. But yes, I did definitely still thinking about, you know, making a piece that's completely the soundscape is just sound effects and music, and it would be super cool, and also lend so much creative freedom to the visual side as well.
Yeah, if that happens in the near future, or any part of your future, I think it would be tremendous. I think it would be really something to look forward to from everybody on our side of things. And again, when I mentioned the feature that I did see that was like that, he had it was live action, so they had actors, of course, in it. And the director was talking about how that put so much more emphasis on them, and would also give them that much more freedom as the actors, because they didn't have anything to speak. So it became like almost like miming things and trying to figure out your body movement and what this, you know, kind of, you know, signifies to the audience versus you just saying what it is. And you're right, there's definitely, you know, things that bring you up from the music side, and then the dialogue can kind of bring you back down to earth and kind of start relating a little bit more directly with the characters. But yeah, you know, again, with somebody that has your skill set, it seems like, wow, that's really nice that you can kind of go in so many different directions. You're not kind of stuck or having to form it out to somebody else and hope they get it right. It's like, well, no, I can do this, so I know how to do what I want in my head, how to get it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, when did the short first premiere at a festival? Because I know you've had a lot of awards and a lot of accolades for this already.
Thank you. Oh my God, I don't remember. I remember it was like kind of around September-ish last year. So it's been going around for a while.
Okay, and so as you said, this was your final project at NYU. Are you going to be then moving on to features? You're moving on to more shorts. What's kind of coming up beyond once Beautiful's kind of run its course in terms of festivals and other appearances with it? What's coming up next with you?
Yeah, for me, so currently I'm studying game design actually at Columbia. So I'm diving into kind of the interactive space because it's such a really like another super awesome way of storytelling and enables so much more stories to be told. And like maybe, some stories are for the bigger screen, but some stories could be really awesome if it's interactive. And yeah, that's the side that I'm exploring personally. And then also I'm working in the feature animation field in China. I'm at the studio that made Over the Moon and Abominable and Kung Fu Panda 3. They're called Pearl Studio. And so yeah, they're developing some really cool Chinese feature animations that I'm also really excited about. So I'm kind of like going down both the path, figuring out personally like what kind of other storytelling mediums I want to explore, and also at the same time just learning a lot more about the feature film industry and the format. And eventually definitely I would want to make a feature animation, and absolutely planning on it right now. But yeah, right, I still see this phase at least before I graduate from Columbia as another round of studying and learning and just evolving as an artist and a creator.
Wow, I feel really inadequate hearing everything you got going on. But no, I think that's absolutely tremendous that you have your hand in game design, that you're studying at Columbia in the graduate level, and that you're continuing your work with animation at a top company there in China, and that you're in this evolving state. That's probably the best transitional state of like getting more knowledge, getting more skill sets, and then kind of seeing where does this take me next for the next level. Yeah. And it does bring me back to the college that I used to work at, and I'm watching some of these guys that were spending hours upon hours on game design and coding and everything else to kind of make their little game come together. And then some of them went on to great things in the gaming industry. So I'm kind of like, wow. So I was actually around that guy when he was breaking down in a in a computer lab because they couldn't get something to work. And
I can totally relate to that.
Yeah, no doubt. And I've been around it. I wasn't doing it personally, but I was around it for over a couple of years. So I saw what those guys go through, and it's like, oh my goodness, just for that. But once it all comes together, then obviously it's a huge feeling of accomplishment when your whole teams put all the stuff together into your game. You finally get some 14-year-old out there to do some testing on and play that thing, and they love it. And yeah, let alone the whole animation side that you're working on, and that whole ball of wax, which is a similar yet different ball of wax. So, my goodness, that's that you have a very bright future ahead of you with such a skill set, so many things that you're pursuing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I have to ask you this. You mentioned that your mom was a professional actress and did those types of was in the arts. Was that a help because your mom was in the arts? So did they ever try to steer you away from these artistic fields and try to put you toward the stereotypical lawyer, doctor, what are you going to do with your life kind of thing? How was it for you, growing up, and that you decided to kind of go down this path?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm really, really grateful to have great parents. Like that's hands down, because my dad's also in the film industry. So they're both like hipsters at their age. When they were at my age, so they completely don't, care which direction I go, and they're really glad that I'm interested in their field, because that means we get to have more common interest and spend more time as a family. And growing up, they really emphasized traveling and just seeing and experiencing other cultures, because that's something that they really lacked in their childhood. And as artists themselves, they think that's really, really a huge important part of any education, is just not just reading about it and like writing about it, and just actually being there and like interacting with people that's completely outside of your community, and learning about cultures that way, and kind of appreciating other landscapes, other cultural contexts in a first person perspective. So, it took them a lot of time and effort and financial support, just to make sure that I get that before I go to college and just like fly off out of their nest. And then, so yeah, that's something that really contributed to my perspective as an artist. And that's what really made me want to be an artist, is just seeing all those different, worlds out there, and appreciating so many other cultures that are completely different from mine, but are, equally beautiful and complex at the same time, and so much story to be told. And so yeah, and when I was figuring out where I wanted to go to college, there's so many countries in the world, universities, majors, blah blah blah, but I still landed back on this, as I said before, like this medium, and this medium that combines so many of my interests, and that just makes me feel happy in general, and feel connected to my family as well. And yeah, and then I was just thinking, if that could be something that is a huge part of my life in the future and be my career, or that would be really awesome. That would be a dream come true. Like, just every day you're working on stuff that you're actually passionate about. So, but of course there was some other considerations of, maybe I should go get like a like a more traditional job, and because art industry, there's always that concern of instability, and other people thinking it's not being actually a job or something. But because my parents are in the field and they've gone through that, and in the 80s in China, and they completely understand, and they trust me in my abilities that I can make that happen for myself. And yeah, and they were just fully supportive of my my choices. The only thing that made them kind of question is, why would you want to do animation? Because they're both in live action, and I explained to them, the amount of freedom and creativity that it provides me, and how much it fits the kinds of stories that I want to tell. And it also captures so much of the performance skill sets, and a lot more than live action actually does for me. And so yeah, they're completely on board with that too now.
Well, that's wonderful that you have such supporting and understanding parents. I mean, that makes a huge, huge difference. As we all know, if you have family support in your corner for whatever you choose to do in life, then that really helps launch you into that path. And if you don't have it, you can still go the direction that you want to, but it's going to be a lot tougher to get there. And that's just the reality of things. So as you mentioned, getting the chance to experience different parts of the world when you were growing up with your parents. Were you traveling like when they were shooting films then, in your dad's case, or if your mom was on location somewhere, or were these strictly like family vacation kind of things where you were going around the world?
It was 90% family vacation, 10% location scout. Yeah.
When you think back to those times, of all the places you had been in the world as you were growing up, what particular location stands out to you for some reason in your mind? What had a huge impact on you?
Oh my God, yeah, so many. But I think the first few that come into mind, first one is Kenya, and that's just magical. And I was in middle school then, and it was just like living in Lion King for some reason. But and those like hot air balloon rides, and Jeep Safari, like that, you have that soundtrack playing in your mind, and like everything is just like as magical as it gets. And then also Tibet is like completely like it's another world. And all those places, the rhythm of life is different, and their cultural context is different, their like color scheme of their worlds are different. So those places just really bring you completely out of your comfort zone, but it's like another type of comfort zone, because like you're just so immersed in your curiosity of that place. And yeah, those are really magical journeys.
Wow, it sounds amazing. I'm pretty much the opposite. I haven't really traveled much, so and even though it's not the same thing, the fact that I can talk virtually to some people from different parts of the world has been really eye-opening to me, just even from doing that, and hearing the culture comes through sometimes when someone's talking to me about something or something. I'm like, So what did you mean by that when they're talking about, I don't know, a certain holiday or a food that they're eating? I had a guest from Germany who was talking about, Mark, do you know any German? Because her English was kind of so-so. And I'm like, your English is perfect. Your English is perfect to me compared to my German because I don't know any. She's like, you don't know anything? And she's like, don't they still call it kindergarten over there, you know, for a pre-first grade? I was like, oh, yeah, they still call it kindergarten. So, well, that's a German word. And I'm like, oh, okay. I guess I know that then. And I didn't realize. And she started rattling off some other things. I can think of brands, you know, Volkswagen or Audi or what, I don't know, things like that. But I don't know words. But it just kind of gave me a different viewpoint. It's like some other cultures have definitely infiltrated what we do here in America, and I just didn't even think about it. It's like, oh yeah, I just always did. I went to kindergarten, then I went to first grade, and I'm like, yeah, you see, you know, a German word. So yeah, it's been fascinating. So I can only imagine if I was actually there in Germany, or if I was there in Tibet or Kenya, or, you know, a place physically, and actually soaking in the whole culture and everything around it. How that would completely, you can't help but be affected by that. I mean, it doesn't matter what kind of person you are. So yeah, and I want to bring this up before we kind of wrap this up too, especially I've had some guests on and we've talked about topical things, especially for the last year. And well, actually two things I want to bring up. One's going to be being female and also being Asian. How have you found the representation when it comes to being in the film community and also now the animation community and potentially the video game industry too? Because those are three things that have been front and center quite a bit the last 15 months.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a really interesting question because, as you said, like there's so much cultural differences around the world. And, you know, I came to the United States for college, you know, when I was, you know, going to college. And before that, I was completely in Asia, you know, in Shanghai and Hong Kong. And, you know, the identity label of being Asian never stood out to me because I was the majority in my home country and home turf, you know. And so that was something that was like a huge cultural shock that I had to deal with when I was going to college, you know, being you know, having to kind of like understand and represent this label of you know, my ethnicity. That's never something that I considered, you know. The biggest that I had to deal with like back home was like, I'm from Shanghai and you're from Beijing, like, you know. And that's already enough cultural differences to be discussing, you know. But, you know, going completely to the other side of the world, like literally 12 hours time zone away, you know. And so much of the society, social values, and you know, that kind of definition of your identity is different. And that's, you know, being Asian is something that I had to deal with and understand and study at the same time, because it's not what I thought what being Asian was in Asia, you know. And you know, now 5 years later, I think being female, being Asian in the entertainment industry overall, I think you know, there's so much work to be done. And there are also so many people working on it already. Like there are so many amazing, talented, and courageous women that I met along the way, and they're doing amazing things to push towards this goal of, you know, making everything as fair as possible and giving everybody a fair shot at what they want to do. Because, you know, everybody like there's so many talented artists out there, and no matter what their genders are, you know, like you just kind of have to really see past that, and just like those kind of filters of, you know, gender and racial borders really shouldn't contribute much to your filtering of artists, especially. And because art is already, you know, such a cultural centric medium, that you should really be focusing on their experiences and what they're trying to express instead of who they are, you know, on the outside. And yeah, and there's so much to be done in the future. And especially I think for animation industry, it's in general doing pretty well as well, like in recent years, about these kind of topics. But for video games, as far as I know, I think there's a lot more work to be done, not just in the employment part and, you know, the creator part, but also the representation of genders and, you know, ethnicities inside the games. Yeah. If you know, you know.
Yeah, everything you said I agree with. And I know that especially the video game industry's got a long way to go. not only within the games, like you're saying, but also just within that industry of how they treat females, how they treat people of color. There's been many factual articles written about kind of the ugly truths of that industry that have finally come out in the last couple of years, and it's good. It's about time that happened, because then you can start making progress and start healing those things and start changing them. So again, having been around that industry, film stuff a little bit, music for sure, and I know a local filmmaker here who's also been kind of fighting an uphill battle with some of these things through representation, but she just did her, I think it was last weekend, she just finished filming the photography for her short film. So, it's like you keep going up the mountain, you keep chipping away at it, and then just not losing sight of the ultimate goal of what you're trying to accomplish. And as everyone's doing that, then we all get there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Mulan, thank you so much for taking the time this morning over there. I thoroughly enjoy your work. I really enjoy talking with you and getting to know you better. And so do we even have like a rough, I know some of your work, at least one of them for sure, is on your YouTube channel, because that's where I saw it. AQ was on there. Is Beautiful going to be eventually available for the masses to see, or what can they do to eventually see this?
Of course, it will be on, YouTube or Vimeo. It will be out there for sure.
Oh, okay. And you mentioned, what you're working on with video games, and also with the animation that you're working on, and it's a little bit of a break right now because of this hole during summer. And the things that we've talked about during the last 40 minutes. Do you ever see doing something, because you already tackled this with Beautiful in terms of a sensitive subject? Do you kind of see that maybe you'll be doing something in the future? It could be through a video game design and a story that's in that video game, or it could be in the animation film world, or live action even, where you tackle something that maybe is culturally based, ethnic based, gender based, specific, like, this is the narrative and the story that you want to tell.
Yeah. The next one that I'm really, really interested in telling is the story of my great-grandfather, who he was part of the first generation of Chinese students that studied abroad in America 100 years ago. And his journey, going to America as a college student and eventually a PhD student, and then going to Europe during World War II, post World War II, and helping the Chinese labor force there. Like, his story is like insanely legendary, and him, eventually coming back to China and being an educator. And her family did a great job of like storing all the archival photographs that he took on his, along his journey, and then also his memoirs and everything. So, allowing us like 100 years later to still kind of relive that. And there's so many meaningful details and moments that are really worth telling and showing more people in the world, and just really sparks a lot of reflections about how far we've gone from 100 years ago, or how far we've gone back in some parts. So yeah, that's kind of like my next focus.
That already sounds amazing. That story that you just mentioned of your great-grandfather, I can't wait to eventually see this come to life in whatever capacity, because that story, that sounds really unique. And it also sounds, again, just in the last 30 seconds, if you're describing that, I'm kind of like, where is this? where can I see already? So,
Thank you so much.
Yes, no, thank you. Don't lose sight of that idea. That sounds like a winner for sure. And again, Mulan, thank you so much for taking the time, and I wish you every success with your studies and your work that you're doing. And if you ever have something that's eventually ready to talk about that you'd like to come on and promote, or just as an update, I love doing follow-ups with my guests. I don't like doing one-off kind of things at all. So, we're how to connect you through social media now, and I think you have my other information too. So you can always reach out, and then don't be surprised if I kind of maybe come knocking every now and then, every couple months down the road, I kind of say, hey, what are you up to right now? And if there's something good to talk about, we'll come back on virtually, and we'll do round 2 of this.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much. It's been really fun.
Thank you. Have a good day over there, and stay safe for sure.
Thank you. You too.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.